This was not planned, but if any of you know something about astrology, Mercury is the planet that rules communication, and it is retrograde. And astrologers say when Mercury is retrograde, it messes up communication. So we can blame Mercury retrograde on all of our tech problems.
We're going to blame it on Mercury and retrograde.
So a couple of weeks ago, the Mindful Spiritual Center had a trivia night fundraiser. I know some of you were there. How many of you were there? And trust is an issue that has been with me my whole life, but being at this trivia night sparked something. We had a very interesting table. There were at least 5, maybe 6 generations who were represented, and it was trivia through the ages, so the questions were for decades of time. We had several world travelers at the table, a couple of entrepreneurs, a teacher, a couple of ministers, an IT genius. I mean, such a wide variety of experience that just scratches the surface. And so we probably could have gotten every question correct. However, on quite a few questions, someone at the table knew the answer, but didn't say it because someone else said something, and so they doubted themselves and thought, oh, that must not be right because the other person sounded very emphatic. Or someone did say it and someone else said no, and then they talked themselves out of it because they doubted themselves. Or, you know, people discussed the answer, and basically, we didn't trust ourselves. Even with all of this knowledge, all of this experience, all of the wisdom, we didn't trust ourselves to give the correct answer. Now, a trivia night, this was not a cutthroat trivia night. It was fun, and we enjoyed each other's company, and in my opinion, part of the reason why this happened is that nobody wanted to step on anyone else's toes. It was a very accommodating, agreeable group of people, and I much appreciated being invited to be at that table. But this issue of doubting the self and not trusting comes up in bigger things than trivia, like what college should I attend? I remember when I was trying to pick a college, I thought it was a life or death decision, that if I picked the wrong college, my entire life would be doomed, and if I picked the right college, my entire life would work. And my father had just died. He was a college professor. I so much wished that he was alive to help me make that decision, but he wasn't. And I didn't ruin my life by going to the wrong college, but I did transfer after my first 2 years. What about a decision like, should I hire this person to be my financial advisor and trust them to take care of my finances because I don't know that much about doing it? Should I trust this person to be my realtor because a house, in my opinion, makes a huge difference in the quality of life? Should I trust this car salesman when I need to buy a car? Should I trust that this is the right person to marry? I've heard a lot of people say that that may be the biggest people decision that you make, is the choice of your spouse or partner. So when we don't trust ourselves, sometimes those really big decisions can be not just troubling, but sometimes heartbreaking and definitely worrying. So people say, well, listen to your first thought. And pay attention to your gut, pay attention to your instincts. Well, the problem with paying attention to your first thought is that if you don't think in a linear fashion, at least in my mind, my thoughts don't come one at a time. They kind of like flash up all at once, like a kaleidoscope. So there is no first thought. There's like this starburst of thoughts. And if you're talking about paying attention to your gut, the gut is the body, and our intuition does not come from the body, even though sometimes people talk about it like it does. So our body might warn us of danger. You know, if you're about to eat something that's rotten and you feel sick to your stomach just by smelling it, that's a protective mechanism that we have to keep ourselves safe. But when we're talking about making choices for our lives, we have what we call free will. Free meaning we have freedom of choice. But it's not free in the sense that every time we make a choice, it's an investment in our lives and in our future. And it costs us something. If you make a choice to do this, it also means you're making a choice not to do that. If I go to this college, I'm not going to all these other colleges. If I marry this person, I'm not marrying all of these other people. So to be able to really make choices that promote our soul growth and spiritual development it's an investment in our future and in the future of everybody whose lives we touch. So it seems to me it should be pretty natural and easy for us to make decisions and trust ourselves, because here we are, these souls in these physical bodies, and in the metaphysical community, I think most people believe that life is for learning. And I've heard people say, it's all good, you know, whatever you choose, it's all gonna work out. Well, I think we all know that's not always true. And so I wonder why people have trouble trusting making choices that are not only in our best interest, but everyone else's best interest. And I think for many of us, it's something we learned. I have a very clear memory. I think I was probably 6 years old. I can even still see the image in my mind. My mother was in the hall, and as a 6-year-old, I could feel her distress, and I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "Nothing's wrong." And I remember feeling that I must be wrong, because I'm feeling that there's something wrong with her. I mean, I didn't verbalize it all this way in my 6-year-old mind, but I remember the feeling of that. And many years later, I found out that my father had just been diagnosed with cancer. And so she was pretty distressed, and I could feel her distress. And I'm not blaming her for it. I'm sure that she thought, you know, I'm not going to trouble a little kid with what's going on with me. And so she was doing it to protect me. And, you know, maybe she wasn't even aware of all of what she was feeling. I think that probably was a big part of it too. But that experience and other ones like that, I learned to doubt myself instead of trusting myself. And that's one of the reasons why this has been kind of a lifelong quest for me, is to learn how to build trust. Well, those of us who are old enough to use money, like actual cash, know that on all of our currency it says, "In God we trust." I thought it always said that. I just found out it started the year I was born, and so that's why it has always said that in my lifetime. But it used to be that it was kind of like a subliminal message every time you had a dollar bill or a coin, that you would see this message, "In God we trust." I mean, now I work at a retail store part-time, and a lot of people have zero cash. They only use plastic. So people don't see that message every day anymore. And the idea, "In God we trust," in my mind means that when we're making decisions, human decisions that affect us and affect other people, it's not that we turn over our decision-making to God. It's we trust that God is always with us, around us, within us, helping us to make the best decisions that are going to be for our soul growth and spiritual development. And to do that is not just reacting. It's not just going by instinct. It means using intuition and reasoning. And one thing that I learned in my metaphysical education is that the solar plexus, which some people call the gut, is the seat of the conscious and subconscious minds. That's where they come together. Intuition comes from the subconscious mind. Reasoning comes from the conscious mind. And when we need to make wise decisions, we need to use both of those. Not just intuition, but reasoning also. So if we're talking about, for example, should I trust this person? we do want to pay attention to, does something not feel right about this person? But we also want to look at the facts. What's their history? What kinds of things have they done? If it's a financial advisor, for example, getting references from other people so that we can engage the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. And when we make choices that are for our soul growth, there's a kind of peace that we experience in that inner place. If there's something that's not right, we do usually feel it that way. It might feel like being sick to your stomach. It might feel like indigestion. But maybe it's not. Maybe it's not a physical thing at all. It's that misalignment where intuition and reasoning are not coming together. And part of the challenge, in my opinion, is that when our emotions are involved, we don't always have a clear, still mind to hear that still voice of truth, to be able to discern, is this something that's really in the best interest of myself and everyone else concerned? And so that's where meditation comes in. It's where concentration comes in, so that we can clear our mind of all of that chatter, so that we can clear the emotionality and really see and feel and hear what is the truth. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, think about a time in your life. I think most of us have probably had an experience like this, where you were completely infatuated with someone, and because of that infatuation, you overlooked the fact that maybe they weren't responsible, maybe they were a scam artist, maybe they had commitment issues. And so we kind of fantasized that, oh, I'll be able to change them. They won't be like that when they're with me. So from the sounds of the laughter, I think that if we haven't done that, we at least have known someone who's done that. And so meditation gives us a way that we can help to kind of clear all of that. And I don't know if I've told you this story before. It was in my thankfully far past. But when I was 24, I was engaged to be married to someone who was extremely attractive, extremely charming, extremely charismatic, like movie star quality. And I kind of didn't pay attention to some of those red flags about him. So anyway, not only were we engaged, we had the wedding plan, I had the wedding dress bought, we had the deposits on the I had the deposits on the wedding venue. I had the deposits on the wedding cake. I was the one who paid for all of these things. And at the very last minute, like even after some of the guests had plane tickets to come to this wedding, I had fortunately two very good friends who gave me an opportunity, not to break off the engagement, but to postpone the wedding. And I was very conflicted about it because, all of these things were in place. And so I tried to meditate, and my mind was so busy. And so I just kept asking my higher self, how am I going to tell my mother? And I heard this clear voice that said, she'll adjust. How am I going to tell all my friends who've gotten plane tickets? They'll adjust. What am I going to do about all of the caterers and the cake people and all of these places that I have the deposits down? They'll adjust. And that was the same message I kept hearing over and over again. She'll adjust, they'll adjust. And I realized finally I was the one that needed to adjust. And so I decided to say, okay, whatever all of these other people think, this really is a life or death decision. And so I put off the wedding. I lost the money in the deposits. So it was kind of an expensive choice in terms of money, but it was a very, very economical choice in terms of my life, because as it turned out, this very attractive, charismatic man was a huge scam artist, and years later I found out he was doing the same thing over and over and over again. And so I am so grateful for my meditation practice that helped me to kind of shift the course of my life that could have gone on a wrong path. And to be able to really hear and feel that clear voice of spirit does require having a still mind. And I think that's what this proverb means. You probably have seen this on calendars, maybe bookmarks, bumper stickers. It's Proverbs 3:5 that says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding." And when I first read that, I thought, well, that doesn't make sense, to lean not on my own understanding. Isn't that part of what we're here for, is understanding? And one of the reasons why I think it's important, if we're going to read scripture, is not just to take one line, is that if you read the whole scripture in context, it doesn't only say that. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the same proverb also says, "Blessed are those who find wisdom, those who gain understanding." So gaining understanding comes through practicing, trusting the decisions that we make are in alignment with the perspective that God has for our life. And that's what I learned from that meditation I was describing. From the perspective of spirit, it wasn't about what other people were going to think. It was about me understanding that this was an adjustment that needed to be made, and that people can make adjustments. Later on, that same proverb says, "Do not let wisdom and understanding out of your sight. Preserve sound judgment and discretion. They will be life for you, an ornament to grace your neck. Then you will go on your way in safety. When you lie down, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sweet." So I think what this scripture is saying is that we do need to use our free will to make choices. We do need to pursue understanding. And we need to meditate and pray so that the choices we make are in alignment with God's will, higher power, source, however you describe that. And one last thing that I want to say is, when we're looking at choices that involve other people, I know sometimes people have difficulty trusting other people because they've been hurt or they've been betrayed. And I'm not saying that this is a matter of blaming the self, but in every situation, I believe that we have been hurt or betrayed by another person. It's probably because in some way we betrayed ourselves. Like we didn't really listen to that still voice inside and made a choice to maybe overlook something, kind of like I was doing with this man I was engaged to. So the more that we do learn how to trust ourselves, the easier it is for us to trust other people. And that happens with practice. It happens with us practicing being trustworthy. So one thing that is important to me is that when I say I'm going to do something, especially if I'm making a promise to someone else, that I follow through on it. It's much easier for me to be accountable to other people when I make a promise than it is to myself. But I also practice doing that with myself. So recently, I decided on every day that I'm not working, I'm going to either go to a yoga class or a strength training class in the morning. I am not a morning person, so to get up and dressed and attend an 8 o'clock exercise class, that requires effort on my part. But I decided I'm going to sign up for these classes and make sure that I go, even if I'm tired, even if I have to skip my cup of coffee, God forbid. And so the more that I practice in small ways, following through on the commitments that I make to myself, the more I build that kind of trust in myself. So what I would encourage you to do is set yourself whatever kind of small or big goal you want to practice saying, okay, I'm going to follow through on this so that I know I'm trustworthy, and then I know I can trust myself.